It's an hour before sunrise, sometime around 1250 BCE, and you're pulling on a linen kilt in the dark, tying reed sandals, stepping out into a walled village wedged into a dry valley west of the Nile, the sand still cold under your feet from the night before. You'd guess the danger here is the sun that hasn't even risen yet. It isn't. The sun is the part everyone thinks of first, and it's also the part that's already been solved. The real fight against the desert happened before you woke up. In the walls around you, the cloth on your back, a jar of water sitting in a doorway. You're about to walk past every piece of that fight without noticing a single one, because that was the whole point. It worked. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about how ancient Egyptians survived some of the hottest, driest summers on the planet. They didn't out-tough the heat, they out-engineered it. Somewhere between raw willpower and modern air conditioning sits a set of ordinary, unglamorous fixes. A house that thinks like a battery, a wardrobe built from a swamp plant, a drink doing double duty as a meal, a doctor's prescription mixing real chemistry with wishful thinking, and a 3,000-year-old piece of broken pottery that snitches on exactly which body part gave out first. All of that's coming. None of it's a coincidence. Start with the house because it's doing more work than you'd think. Mud brick sounds primitive. It's just river silt, straw, and sun. But mud is a lousy conductor of heat, and builders made the walls thick enough to turn that flaw into a feature. The wall spends all day slowly soaking up outside heat and doesn't release it into the room until well after dark, by which point you've usually left. Thick walls alone don't move air, though, and stagnant air in a desert house is its own kind of misery. So, on the roof, especially at sites like Amarna, you'll find a malkaf, a wind catcher, an angled shaft built to grab the north wind and funnel it straight down into the main room. One 18th dynasty illustration, from the Book of the Dead belonging to the scribe Nacht, shows exactly this kind of structure sitting on a rooftop. It's not decoration, it's HVAC, 4,000 years early. The windows complicate the picture a little. They're small, set high near the ceiling. Not an oversight, but a trade-off. Big low windows let in glare, dust, and heat all at once, and it wasn't worth it. Whitewashed plaster bounced what light did get in, so rooms stayed bright without staying hot, and in the doorway sat a porous clay jar of drinking water, sweating faintly through its own walls, cooling by evaporation. The same trick behind a modern swamp cooler. Now zoom in on what you're wearing, because your clothing is running the same playbook as your house. Linen, spun from flax, woven loose enough to move air across your skin instead of trapping it there, which is exactly what wool does. Which is exactly why Egyptians mostly skipped wool. Left undyed, that linen dried out pale, nearly white, reflecting sunlight instead of soaking it in. But the real surprise is on your face. That thick black coal rimming your eyes isn't just cosmetic. It cuts the glare bouncing off sand and limestone, the same logic a modern athlete uses with eye black under a stadium light. By mid-morning, that glare alone is enough to leave you squinting and watery-eyed, coal or not. None of this is theoretical. You can watch it play out at one specific place, Deir el-Medina, the government-built village for the men who carved the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings. It's a rough spot for a town. No farmland, no natural water, ringed by cliffs that bake all afternoon and radiate the heat straight back at you. Every drop the village used had to be hauled in by dedicated water carriers walking from the Nile, and every worker was paid partly in beer, thick and nutritious, not a treat, but a genuine daily staple doing real caloric and hydration work in a place where food security was never guaranteed. Here's where it gets good, though. Because, for all that engineering, the record shows the heat still won plenty of fights, and the proof isn't a skeleton. It's paperwork. Scribes at Deir el-Medina kept obsessive attendance logs, and one survives almost completely intact. A limestone ostracon, now in the Museo Egizio in Turin, tracking 280 days of absences, probably from the reign of Rameses II. Next to each missed day, a scribe wrote the reason. Some read almost like a joke. Brewing beer, embalming a brother, one man bitten by a scorpion. But scroll down the list, and the single most common excuse by a wide margin is simply illness. One worker, a man named Apeti, logged roughly 11 sick days across that stretch alone. Another entry on the very same document reads only suffering with his eyes. It's tempting to read that eye complaint as heat damage or sun injury, and maybe some of it was. But here's the honest complication. The reading isn't settled. Trachoma, a bacterial eye infection endemic across ancient Egypt regardless of season, produces nearly identical symptoms, and historians studying these records are genuinely split on how much of the eye's entries are heat-driven versus just Egypt's ordinary background rate of eye disease. That uncertainty isn't a gap in the story, it's part of the story. The same crowded, dusty, sun-blasted village that made heat stress more likely also made a bacterial epidemic more likely, and separating the two 3,000 years later isn't always possible. And when someone did go down from the heat itself, what happened next tells you exactly where ancient medicine stood. Egyptian physicians of the era had real pharmacological knowledge on record. The Ebers Papyrus, a 20-meter medical scroll from around 1550 BCE now held in Leipzig, catalogs hundreds of treatments, genuine chemistry tangled up with spells in roughly equal measure. For heat collapse specifically, historians of medicine have traced a documented Egyptian remedy: an ointment or drink of olive oil mixed with wine. It's a real prescription for a real emergency written down by someone who was genuinely trying. By the account of researchers who've studied it since, it also probably didn't do very much. That's not a failure worth mocking. It's a head start on chemistry running out exactly where you'd expect it to, centuries before anyone understood what a fever was actually doing to a body. So you're back at the start of that walk before sunrise, kilt tied, sandals on, heading toward a tomb shaft. You'll spend the day chiseling out of solid rock, sweat already turning to a fine crust of salt on your skin. Everything protecting you today was decided by someone else, a long time before you were born. The thickness of the wall, the weave of the kilt, the black paint under your eyes, the beer waiting in your ration, even the shape of the excuse you'll scratch onto a shard of pottery if today's the day your eyes finally give out. Would you have known walking into that heat how much of your survival had already been engineered for you before you ever woke up? If a piece of broken pottery from 1250 BCE can tell historians more about a person's daily life than most of us will leave behind, it's probably worth a like and a subscribe on your way out.